The development of King of Meat was born from a casual conversation among three industry veterans during an informal pub meetup: Johnny Hopper, Mike Green, and Adam Sibic, all former employees of the legendary Lionhead Studios. The origin of the concept is almost comical and reveals a lot about the creative mindset behind the project. While chatting about what kind of game they'd like to make, Adam mentioned his passion for Jim Henson's Labyrinth. Mike was fascinated by WWE at the time, and Johnny simply asked, "What if we made a game that was both?" This seemingly impossible fusion between Henson's whimsical fantasy and the over-the-top spectacle of professional wrestling became the cornerstone of everything King of Meat represents today. It's fascinating how genuine creative projects often emerge from these spontaneous moments rather than calculated corporate briefings. Glowmade's decision to build their own in-house engine for King of Meat reveals a development philosophy deeply rooted in the studio's programming culture. Johnny Hopper, the CEO, comes from a solid technical background and has established a very strong engineering culture in the studio, where all decisions, from engine choice to the types of games they make, reflect what genuinely excites them. Mike Green openly admits that using a ready-made engine was never even considered, and that's simply how they prefer to make games. This choice is risky and challenging, especially considering that King of Meat is a multiplayer action game that needs to run at 60 FPS as a baseline to provide the best possible experience. The philosophy behind it is almost poetic. Programmers code the engine on which designers build the game on which players create levels, a true passing of the invention baton. The partnership between Glowmade and Amazon Games represents a significant strategic move for both companies, but for very different reasons. For Amazon, King of Meat symbolizes a deliberate diversification of their portfolio, which until then was heavily centered on MMORPGs like New World and Lost Ark. Christoph Hartmann, vice president of Amazon Games, makes it clear that the company is not stubbornly focused only on MMOs and seeks to offer a wide range of high-quality experiences. For Glowmade, this partnership provides the financial and marketing resources needed to realize their ambitious vision while maintaining creative independence. What impresses me is how Amazon doesn't seem limited by fiscal responsibilities in delivering titles, which theoretically should give Glowmade the creative freedom needed to polish and refine King of Meat without the typical schedule pressures that kill creative projects. The historical context of Lionhead Studios adds fascinating layers to the development of King of Meat. Lionhead was one of the most creative and respected studios in the industry, responsible for revolutionary titles like Black and White and the Fable series, but also a classic example of how unbridled ambition can lead to problems. The studio closed in 2016 after years of financial difficulties and direction changes imposed by Microsoft. Glowmade's founders carry this experience as both inspiration and lesson. They know what it's like to work on truly innovative projects, but they've also learned that creativity must be balanced with sustainability. The joyful creativity philosophy that Johnny Hopper describes seems like a natural evolution of the Lionhead spirit, but with a more focused and pragmatic approach. The development of King of Meat also reflects a sophisticated understanding of the role of user-generated content in the sustainability of modern games. Glowmade doesn't see the creation mode as an additional feature, but as a central characteristic that defines the game's identity. All official levels were created with the same tools that players will have access to, following the principle of, if you can play, you can build. This democratic approach to level design is technically ambitious and requires tools that are intuitive enough for casual use but powerful enough for complex creations. Mike Green expresses genuine excitement about seeing how the community will use these tools in unexpected ways, based on the studio's previous experience with Wonder Worlds. It's a bold bet that could transform King of Meat into a long-lasting creative platform, or, if poorly executed, into a game with frustrating tools that no one wants to use. The business philosophy behind King of Meat also deserves highlight, especially considering the current climate in the gaming industry. The studio has established three fundamental principles that genuinely impress me. No pay to win. All purchases are purely cosmetic. Choice. All cosmetics are optional. And transparency. No loot boxes or randomized monetization. In an era where many games are blatantly predatory, this approach suggests that both Glowmade and Amazon Games are betting on player longevity and satisfaction rather than immediate profits. Of course, it's easy to be skeptical about business promises, but considering that King of Meat is positioned as a long-term creative platform, it makes economic sense to keep players happy and engaged. The game's success will depend as much on the quality of the creation tools as on community trust, and aggressive monetization policies would kill both. From a narrative point of view, the game doesn't hide that it's more concerned with atmosphere than with a linear story. Everything is backdrop for the spectacle. Competitors are summoned to increasingly insane dungeons, facing hordes of monsters under the gaze of a fictional audience. The lore of Loragok has a laid-back Valhalla vibe, where heroes, villains, monsters, and eccentric figures coexist. Sometimes, out of sheer boredom, they just want to fight and show off to crowds hungry for carnage. The cool thing here is that each creature has personality. It's not just another skeleton to defeat, but a character with dreams, family, job, and personal reasons for being in the ring. King of Meat's gameplay is an open invitation to chaos, and that's undoubtedly the title's big charm. The game mixes classic hack and slash elements with an exaggerated TV show setting, something that recalls a WrestleMania satire or the caricatured excesses of the 90s. But it's not just about going out and beating. There's a mix of humor, interaction with the environment, and constant creativity, which leaves each match with that flavor of unpredictability. The feeling of being in the center of a spectacle is reinforced by the protagonism given both to the brawling and to the quirky comments and the absurd atmosphere of the game show, creating a light, almost mocking experience, but totally addictive. In every dungeon, the action never stops. There are always enemies, traps, and moments when the fun takes over, whether from ridiculous monsters, absurd traps like spike walls, horse hooves falling from the ceiling, or even explosive ducks. The game makes great use of the environment's physics, allowing parts of the scenery to be thrown at both enemies and friends during battles, and this turns into guaranteed fun, especially in cooperative modes. The simplicity of the controls, light attacks, heavy attacks, shield, and special moves, ends up being a hit, as it leaves room for the focus to be on creative interaction and spontaneous reactions as the chaos unfolds. Another crucial point is the level creation system, which puts robust tools in players' hands to create completely original dungeons. It's almost a Mario Maker of the hack-and-slash world, with the difference that satire and absurdity reign supreme. In practical testing, it became clear that the community will have the power to define the game's longevity direction. Each user-created dungeon can be fully customized, and insane challenges arise as players learn to explore design possibilities. This makes the experience something alive and evolving, since every login has the potential to surprise with something new made by another player. Playing in a group, King of Meat reaches another level of fun. Up to 4 people can enter the dungeon ring, either competing or cooperating to overcome monsters and obstacles. The mechanics favor both joint actions and the famous trolling of teammates by throwing them into scenery traps, which yields laughs and memorable moments. There's a friendship evolution system with hub characters, plus benefits and exclusive items as NPC interaction increases. All this embedded socialization brings the experience closer to a party game, but with more depth thanks to consistent combat. In the solo aspect, the game doesn't lose its shine. The pace is a bit more controlled, and it's possible to explore the dungeons at your own time, paying attention to narrative details and nonsense dialogues that arise during battles. The presence of scoring challenges and performance achievements keeps the motivation to try again and seek better trophies. This, added to evolution through coins to unlock skills and customization, ensures that even playing alone, engagement is high and rewarding. The impression is that King of Meat embraces the absurd without fear, and stands out precisely for that. Even though technical complexity isn't the goal, the charismatic set of accessible combat, scenario creation, fun progression, and nonsense humor culture makes the game incredibly engaging. Each match feels like a new episode of a crazy reality show, and even when everything goes wrong, the game draws laughs and leaves you wanting to try again. Those who enjoy cooperative games, level creation, and lots of quality goofing around will feel completely at home here. King of Meat's graphics are a spectacle in their own right within the game's insane proposal. They're not made to impress with technology, but with visual impact, boldness, and satirical tone. From the first moment, you notice how the art direction decided to embrace total absurdity instead of seeking realism. The game's world mixes classic gladiatorial arena elements with bizarre pop culture references, colossal dragons, and gymnastics traps, all with an almost cartoonish aesthetic. This creates a chaotic and deliciously nonsense visual atmosphere, which reinforces the medieval reality show climate, making it clear that the purpose is to entertain and provoke, not simulate reality. Technical simplicity is compensated by exaggerated design. Characters are walking caricatures with disproportionate proportions and a huge variation of outfits and weapons. Customization is a fundamental part of the visual. Avatars with squid heads, high-heeled boots, or sausage hammers function as declarations of irreverence. The game invites creating unusual combinations, celebrating the ridiculous and player creativity. This freedom is one of the title's greatest graphical virtues, because despite relatively simple models, the character's charisma is instant and memorable. The scenarios follow the same pattern. Each dungeon seems like a mix of amusement parks with Roman temples, tinged with neon colors and grotesque details. Background elements dialogue all the time with the action. Giant banners with the player's face, fake commercials on loading screens, flashing lights, and frenzied audiences. The result is a visually saturated, almost delirious experience that conveys the feeling of being in the center of a crazy competition broadcast live. It's an original way to appeal to excess, taking advantage of graphical limitations in favor of style. Movement within the game stands out for dynamism and frenetic pace. Lots of particle effects, exaggerated animations, and impacts that amplify the sense of chaos. Even being technically simple in terms of polygons and textures, there's special attention to the timing of blows, explosions, and interactions with the scenario. Humor is present even in animations, which exaggerate falls, applauses, emotes, and celebrations. It's not a game for those seeking smoothness, but for those who appreciate stylized grotesque. Each frame seems made to provoke laughs or astonishment. King of Meat's central hub is another visual highlight. It recalls social centers of large, multiplayer games, but embraces a medieval fair aesthetic with modern advertising. NPCs in outrageous poses, colorful menus, stores with absurd items, and challenges decorate the environment. Everything sounds purposefully artificial and eccentric, a fun critique of both celebrity cult and game corporatism. In moments when banners with the player's name appear, you feel almost like a participant in a viral show, reinforcing that the visual is part of the joke. In the end, what catches my attention most in King of Meat's graphics is the radical commitment to nonsense and goofing. The game transforms limitations into its own style, adopting absurdity as visual language. Even for those who prefer ultra-realistic graphics, it's impossible not to have fun navigating this carnival of satire, colors, and bizarre monsters. The graphics don't just seek to be beautiful, but memorable and provocative. A true lesson on how visual identity can be a more powerful weapon than any high-resolution polygon when the intention is to create unfiltered collective fun. In my opinion, King of Meat's performance is surprisingly solid, especially considering the cooperative chaos and level creation elements it offers. Based on what I played and the technical analyses I read, the game runs smoothly on most modern PC configurations, with a stable frame rate that rarely drops below 60 FPS on mid-range hardware, like an Intel Core i3 with 8 GB of RAM. This impressed me because in similar games full of on-screen enemies and dynamic interactions, performance drops are common. But here, Glowmade's developers seem to have optimized the assets well, ensuring that dungeons full of skeletons and traps don't overload the system. I, as someone who loves retro games and beat-em-ups, get excited about this, as it reminds me of those classic arcades that ran smooth on old hardware, but with a modern touch that doesn't sacrifice fun for excessive graphical realism. In the end, this stability makes me want to play longer sessions without irritating interruptions, making the experience immersive and addictive, as if I were really competing in a crazy TV show. Speaking more specifically about frame rate, I think King of Meat shines by maintaining consistent FPS even in high-intensity moments, like combats with monster hordes or puzzles that require team coordination. In the demos I tested, I noticed that at 1080p resolutions or higher, the game stays locked at 60 FPS most of the time, which is perfect for a title focused on fast action and precise movements, without those lags that ruin the timing of a blow or jump. Overall, this frame rate consistency elevates the game above many similar indies, making each run feel like a rehearsed performance, without technical stumbles that take the focus away from satire and absurd humor. Regarding performance on consoles like PS5 and Xbox Series, King of Meat seems optimized to run without issues, with fast loadings and no notable crashes in previews. I imagine that, with the more powerful hardware of these consoles, the game easily reaches 4K at 60 FPS, which is ideal for local or online multiplayer sessions, where any delay could frustrate cooperation. In my view, this is a relief compared to some recent titles that suffer from day one patches to fix instabilities. Here, the test builds already show a technical maturity that makes me trust the final launch. As a fan of classic beat-em-ups that ran perfectly on old consoles like the Master System, I appreciate how King of Meat captures that plug-and-play essence without sacrificing flashy neon-filled visuals. It's the kind of performance that motivates me to invite friends to play, knowing we won't deal with crashes or slowdowns that interrupt the chaotic fun. Now, about possible performance issues like stuttering or FPS drops. I'd say they're rare but not non-existent, especially in solo modes where AI can overload processing in more complex dungeons. In my experiences and the reports I've seen, there's occasionally a light stutter every few seconds on more modest setups, dropping about 10-12 frames, which bothers me a bit because it breaks the flow of a combat that's already frenetic by nature. Personally, as someone who analyzes games for my channel, I see this as a point to be polished before launch. Perhaps with updates that better optimize AI or reduce load in scenarios crowded with enemies. But in the general context, these hiccups are minimal and don't spoil the experience, reminding me of those retro games that had technical limitations but were still addictive. It's more an opportunity for devs to show post-launch dedication, which I always appreciate in indie studios. I would recommend buying King of Meat at launch if you're the type who enjoys jumping into the initial hype and experiencing fresh content with an active community, especially since the game comes out on October 7th, 2025, with early access starting October 2nd for pre-purchasers. The title is mainly indicated for players seeking chaotic cooperative fun, with hack-and-slash elements and level creation, perfect for multiplayer sessions with friends where the focus is on corporate satire and absurd humor, reminiscent of those crazy 90s TV shows that I love revisiting in lists of old games. Personally, I would be tempted to buy it right away because the price of $30 for the standard edition seems fair for a game that promises over 100 dungeons at launch, plus robust creation tools that would allow me to make levels inspired by classic beat-em-ups like Streets of Rage, something I'd love to test for channel videos. However, if you're like me and prefer to avoid initial bugs or day one patches, waiting might be better since previews indicate the game is already polished. But post-launch updates could refine things like the score multiplier or limited moveset, making the experience even smoother for long recordings without frustrations. I think it's worth waiting if your focus is on deep or narrative single-player games, as King of Meat is more suited for those who like light and social party games, with emphasis on cooperation to solve puzzles and combat monster hordes in community dungeons.
Very nice. Crispy enemy. Heartbreak. They're airborne. They've knocked their opponents off their feet. That move changes things. A switch has been activated. Good. Lock down that troll blood. That's one giant step for these contenders.
Puta, lepasin.
Enemy attacks locked.
Yung chest kita takkan niya.
Roasted and perfection. Yes! Oh my! They make it look easy. Ouch! A real slap. Sky high! Look at that! Incredible showmanship! like a pig.
Oh, sakit. Oh, dia kalah kau.
Knockout blow. Glory hole.
Kau lang heavy attack. Mana-mana shield kau lang heavy attack.
Scoop up that traitor. Scoop.
Dah agak dah.